So welcome back to my channel. I am Jason and this is from Sin's Perspective Reviews. So I am back with my recap of Black Narcissus episode 3. A lot happened. So let me try to get into this and get through this as quickly as possible. So it opens up obviously not technically where it left off, because where episode 2 left off, Sister Clodagh was in the woods. She was looking for Ruth and Father Roberts, and she kind of got turned around. So this episode opens with her making her way back to the convent. Joseph runs out to meet her and, to help her, because she clearly is frozen. I mean, it's a storm going on, so he's trying to help her inside, and she was saying how she wasn't able to find them, and he said, oh well, they can't, they're here. So I guess Ruth was able to find Father Roberts and bring him back to the convent. So they go in, she go in, and of course she walks over and was happy that he was okay and that he was able to make his way in. And then she turned to Sister Adela, and thanked her for being there. And Sister Adela says, well, it seems like our presence is much needed, or something to that effect. And so you look over at Sister Ruth, and you can clearly see that Sister Ruth has been saying something. We don't know what, but Father Roberts and Sister Adela, is like, you can kind of see that they are not totally happy with Sister Clodagh. And you can see, because when Sister Clodagh looks over at Ruth is, she has this kind of like smug look on her face, which is, I'm assuming, the reason why she wanted to go and see Father Robert first, so she could tell him her side of the story. So if you remember in the previous episode, she told Sister Ruth that she asked Father Robert to take her back to Darjeeling so she could see a doctor, and of course she doesn't want to leave. So this was the perfect opportunity for her to say whatever she needed to say before Sister Clodagh had a chance to talk to them. And you can clearly see that whatever she told them is giving them some type of impression of Sister Clodagh. Okay, so the next day, you can see he's walking around the school, him and Father Roberts and Sister Adela walking around the school, and he was quite happy with the work that they were able to accomplish. And of course, he's not too happy because there's still some remnants of the past, the artwork and the naked women and all that. And there was some kind of shrine set up that had these, I don't know what to call them. I should have looked it up. But they were like these, I don't want to say necklaces. Whatever the case may be, Sister Adele was like, oh, idolatry. And so she took the necklaces from around whatever it was on, and I guess they moved them out of the room while Father Roberts was, scanning the room. And you can see when she breezed past Angle kind of looked at her like, okay. Okay, we see. So now Sister Clodagh, Father Roberts is in Sister Clodagh's office, and he was saying how, he was happy with the progress that they've made, but he can kind of see why Sister Philippa wanted to return. And Sister Clodagh was, telling him that she understands that, there have been some distractions and difficulties, but they're finding their way. And of course, he was happy about that. And then he talks about, she talks about Sister Ruth, and how Sister Ruth has a fragile mind, and how she thinks that she should go back with them. And he's telling her that, Sister Ruth can be difficult, but that's a part of what we do here. We can't, turn people away because they're difficult. It is our job to help them, to guide them, to be their calm, I guess, in the storm, and their refuge. And we can't do that if we're not doing with others, if we're not doing that with our own. And, like I said, while he admitted that he understands that Sister Ruth can be problematic, he also told her that she needs to check, look at herself sometimes and check herself. And she had to admit that, Reverend Dorothea, Reverend Mother, Sister Superior, told her about her pride, and she did in the first episode. And he said that, well, did you take heed to what she was saying? And she didn't really have a response because, you know, she knows that she hasn't. So he's basically telling her that Sister Ruth is basically your test. Not her test in her ability to lead, but more so, you know, this is a trial, tribulation, whatever you want to say. This is going to be something that she's going to have to work at. And he's just telling her, just love her. And basically just be patient. And of course, that's not what she wanted to hear. She wants Sister Ruth gone, but that's not going to happen. So, the next, Sister Ruth was leaving her room and something fell off her door. I don't know if that was a door handle or whatever the case may be. So she picks it up and whispering and all that starts happening. And then she realized that it looks like it's a door knocker, but it's also a key, like a key some kind of way. And that was the key to get in Srimati's room. So she was able to go into the room. She kind of looked around and, you know, she was kind of feeling some kind of way being in there, right? Like she, I don't know. Like I said, she felt, I mean, she didn't look uneasy at all being in there. She was just, you know, kind of milling around looking through the stuff. And of course, while she was in the room, there were like flashes of the past of when Srimati was in the room and the baby crying, which would have been Dilip when he was, a wee lad. And, you know, eventually she left the room. And so, the following day, Father Roberts was, you know, saying the prayers and he was telling them that, you know, it's Lent. And so he want them to work on, basically doing what they needed to do, to serve the Lord. That should be their focus, you know, pleasing the Lord. And so, you know, with that, he said that, I hope that things will be a lot better here. And he was kind of looking at, Sister Clodagh, and with that he was on his way. So that night, Sister Clodagh, she was kind of mulling over what he said, and she was thinking about what he said, and then eventually she, you know, went down to, because the holy man is still there, and you know, he's just sitting there meditating, like you really don't know, like he's just staring out into whatever. And she asked him, what do you see? Of course, he didn't answer, but she started praying, like, don't let me fail. Like she really wants this to be a success. And so that was, you know, basically her prayer was, please, you know, guide me, help me, not talking to the holy man, but just praying. Like that's her fear that she's going to fail. So later that night for dinner, Angu was about to serve the food, and so Sister Clodagh made it a point to, because Sister Ruth was sitting next to her, so she actually served Sister Ruth, almost like she was extending an olive branch to Sister Ruth, and then Angu went on and proceeded to serve everyone else. So at some point, Mr. Dean walked in, and of course they said, you know, their highs or whatever. Sister Adela, she had not, this is her first night there, so she has never met Mr. Dean. And they talked for a little bit. I think Sister Bryony asked if she wanted him to get a plate, and he said, oh, don't worry about that, I'm not going to be here long. Or it was the way he said it. And then he told Sister Clodagh that he wanted to talk to her. And Sister Adela was kind of offended, like, how could, you know, why does he, you know, he behaves like a savage, like she felt that he was rude. And so Sister Clodagh went to meet with Mr. Dean, who in her office, and of course Sister Adela, ever watchful, decided to go with her. And you know, they started talking, and he made some comment about Father Roberts, and Adela didn't like it. And she basically told him that, you know, it was rude to talk that way about a man of God. And he basically said that I'm not a church member, basically reiterated, like, I don't follow the same rules that you guys follow. I'm not a church member. That's not why I'm here. And then he proceeded to talk to Sister Clodagh about some letter that he received from Father Roberts. And he, you know, basically said that he felt that Father Roberts was quite high-handed, and I guess he wasn't happy with what was in the letter. And you can see Sister Adela kind of looking, because he was really close to Sister Clodagh, and Sister Adela is kind of looking like, okay, well, what is that about? Because of course they're not allowed to touch men and be alone with men, and so this is not something that she expected to see, him being that close to Sister Clodagh. And Sister Clodagh basically told him that, we wanted to see if you can find a man that you trust to do the work, the renovations. And he was like, oh, so you knew about this. I guess she was feeling some kind of way, or felt like him being there was too much of a distraction for her. So she wanted him to recommend somebody else to do the work. And of course he wasn't happy with that, but he was like, you know what? Fine, I'll see what I can do. So as he left, Sister Adela went behind him, and she started talking about the holy man, and him being there is kind of odd, and if they could find someplace else for him to go. And he basically said that there's really nothing that they can do. And he said, she was like, well, surely you could talk to the general. He was like, well, actually, this land, this property is owned by the general's brother. And since the holy man is the general's brother, so that's his land, so they can't very well ask him to leave his land. So they're pretty much stuck with him, and what, I guess, whenever he decides to leave or pass away, whatever the case may be. So he was like, I wouldn't expect a favorable response. Basically, it's his land. He can do what he wants. He can sit wherever he wants, and he can stay there as long as he wants. That's what it was. So Sister Adela wasn't happy about that, but it wasn't a whole lot she could do about it. So Dilip and Kanchi, they're in the washroom. They meet in the washroom. He's talking about this book. I don't know what book. Did he say Sherlock Holmes? He was reading some book. And he ends up dropping the book, and him and Kanchi ends up kissing. Sister Adela walks in. He ends up moving, going forward to distract her so that Kanchi can sneak out. And he starts saying that he was there to say goodbye to Angu, that she, doesn't like him when he leaves and doesn't say, goodbye to her. And she basically told him that she had no idea, she didn't know where Angu was. So eventually he left. Sister Clodagh comes over, and they talked for a little bit, and she was like, oh, well, Angu loves him to pieces. She was his nurse, his mother's friend, and the whole thing. And so she, does care for Dilip quite a bit. And so she made comment, Sister Adela made comment about his scent, the black narcissus, and how you could smell it from so far away. And, it basically offended her sensibilities. Like, why couldn't he can't keep it, keep it simple. So he left. Sister Clodagh was still doing the laundry, and then she saw the book on the ground, and she kind of looked at the book. And there was some piece of fabric in there or something. And then she had kind of a memory. And then she looked over at Kanchi. Kanchi was playing with Joseph. And she gave her the book. And you could tell by Sister Claudia's face that she was not happy. Again, Sister Clodagh is more worldly than the rest. So there are things that she's going to pick up on that the others do not. And she realized, what's going on here. So, later that night, Sister Clodagh was in her room, and she was having these memories of this guy. We still don't know his name. And it was of an intimate moment they had. And I guess a way of punishing herself, she ends up burning her hand on a candle that she had in her room. It's like, okay, girl, I don't think if you need to do that. But again, that's how she chose to deal with that. I guess to associate these memories with pain, so it'll some type of aversion therapy. I guess I don't know. So they're doing prayers, and Sister Clodagh is saying the prayers, and you can see that she becomes faint and she almost collapsed. Sister Bryony helps her, and she asks, to basically tell her, I think it's the fast, because they only eat, they've been eating like broth or something, but they only eat like once a day, and it's late at night. It's a lot. So she basically said that Sister Clodagh basically said there's no point in Lent without sacrifice, basically. And she told them that, you know, starting tomorrow, I'm assuming that it was Tuesday, so she said Wednesday will be a day of silence, and every Wednesday until the end of Lent. So, you can kind of see Ruth's face, and she always looking all scowled and all looking all evil and stuff, so she was not happy about that. So, Ruth is back in Srimati's room, and eventually Angu, I guess she saw the door open, she walked in, and initially Ruth thought that Angu was going to say something, but she, you know, didn't, and, you know, she was quite happy to be in there, again, and she started talking about, Ruth found some kind of material, a dress or something that she was looking at, and Angu was like, that belonged to Donvi, I think that's how you pronounce it, Donvi. And she was a concubine. And she was saying how Srimati blamed Donvi for her lover leaving, which I'm assuming would be Dileep's father. And so Sister Ruth glances over at a mirror and she can see Srimati's reflection. So you can see she's getting deeper and deeper into whatever is, sorry, just make sure it's still recording, whatever's going on with her. The following morning, Sister Adela was in the garden, and Mr. Dean arrives. And he's talking to, it's Mr. Dean arrived, and he's talking to, he walked in, and Mixie asked, well, you know, where Sister Clodagh was. Sister Ruth was in the kitchen, and she basically pointed to her mouth, so he realized that they had taken a vow of silence. And he was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to get much done today. He talked to her for a bit, but you know, all of these interactions with him, Sister Ruth is interpreting them as more than they are. He has not shown any interest in Sister Ruth at all, romantically or anything. I think he just sees her as a kid in a sense. You know, he's not, but in her mind, he's like all that. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily all Ruth or some influenced by some supernatural intervention or Srimati. I don't know. We don't know what the relationship was between Srimati and Mr. Dean, or why Sister Ruth is latching on to him, or some repressed whatever. We don't know when Sister Ruth joined the convent. Did she have a life before that? We don't know. Or, you know, so we don't know why why she is so affected by this, and why her sight is set on Mr. Dean. But he, you know, basically said his goodbyes, and, you know, that was pretty much it on that. So we go outside. Sister Clodagh and Sister Bryony, they're unpacking something, and next thing you know, you hear all this chaos and screaming and stuff. So Sister Clodagh go run to see what was going on, and you already knew that it was Angu and Kanchi. Angu was beating Kanchi. You could kind of see Dileep kind of buttoning his belt or something around his waist. So some chicanery was going on. Angu walked in, and she's upset. By this time, Sister Clodagh is there, and Angu was telling her that, this is, you know, is evil. Something she was saying was going on between them. She wasn't happy at all. And she ends up saying that, you could tell, Angu doesn't like Kanchi. So Angu walks off. Dileep walks off. Sister Clodagh goes over to kind of, and try to comfort, Kanchi somewhat, but she's disappointed as well, and she eventually walks off, because now remember, they have this vow of silence, so she can't really say anything to her at this point. And so eventually everybody walks off. Of course, Sister Ruth can't walk off without giving this old ugly, balled up face look, and she cutting her eyes at the girl, and she walks off eventually. And so you see Sister Clodagh, and she's, you know, having another one of these memories. So you saw her, it looks like she was back in her room, so it looked like she was about to put her hand over the fire again, but you see that she had this really bad burn, I guess, from the last time she did that. So, yeah, I guess that night, you know, she couldn't sleep, and Angu was doing something, and she knew that Sister Clodagh was disturbed about something, so she invited her in. Sister Clodagh got really emotional, she started crying, and Sister Angu, you know, basically started to wash her feet, you know, wanted to just calm her and relax her, and she ends up saying to her, the world is a bubble of froth. And Sister Clodagh kind of looked at her like, kind of understood what she was trying to say, but yeah, Sister Clodagh is, it seemed like, I guess she feel like she got the weight of the world on her shoulders, things are falling apart, you know, she's struggling, it's a lot. It's a lot. So the following morning, Sister Clodagh sent a letter to Mr. Dean. As Joseph was leaving, Sister Bryony and Sister Blanche was out talking to one of the women from the village. Her baby was sick, and she wanted the sisters to help, but they couldn't really understand what she was saying, so they needed Joseph to interpret what she was saying. And eventually, Sister Blanche basically told her that there's nothing we can do. Mr. Dean has told them several times, do not get involved with these people, because no matter what you do, regardless of your best intentions, if it goes wrong, they are going to blame you. Stay out of it. And I'm assuming that's what Sister Blanche, you know, she's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And you can tell that tore her up, because Sister Blanche loves children. So, but, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that she can do. And they kind of briefly flashed to Sister Adela. She's on the tower. She says her prayers, and then she rings the bell. I don't know, because she saw them arriving, them being the General, Dilip, Mr. Dean. And so Sister Clodagh goes out to, you know, greet them. And you can see Dilip is upset, because Sister Clodagh, I guess she wrote to the General to tell him about the goings on. And as they go inside, Mr. Dean pulls her to the side and say, you know, I tried to talk to him, but I think it fell on deaf ears. And so now the General basically told Sister Clodagh that girl is from a low class, and that basically, like, I mean, what else are they gonna do? It's all her fault. She's this evil temptress, whatever. They didn't go into all that, but I mean, from the gist of it, you can kind of get that. And so you can see Dilip. He says, the General says Dilip has something he wants to say to you. He apologized for breaking their rules, and he asked for forgiveness. And then the General chimed in and basically said, I want her dismissed. Basically, I want her sent back to the village. And Sister Clodagh basically said no. Like, we can't send her back to the village. It is our duty as an order to take care of the motherless. And Kanchi's mother has passed on, which is one of the reasons why she's there. And the General pulled out. He relented and basically said, okay. And then he pulled out this stick and basically said 3 strokes. He wanted her to get whipped 3 times. Sister Clodagh couldn't do it. She's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then eventually he hands the stick to Dilip. Dilip didn't want to do it either, but at the same time, that's the way that things are done. And he did. And of course, he was upset. Dilip was upset. Sister Clodagh was upset. And, you know, she felt like it was unnecessary. So eventually the General leaves, and Mr. Dean is standing there, and she was upset. So Sister Clodagh is not upset with Mr. Dean, because she was like, you know, for all this talk that you give about being a rebel, why, you know, didn't you say something? And he was like, what else? You know, how can I save her when I can barely save myself? When I can't save myself. They talked a little bit, and she wasn't happy. She felt like he should have intervened, but again, okay, he don't really have any power. So that night you saw Srimati. There was a flash of Ruth in Srimati's room, and she's kind of looking at this mirror, and you kind of see, I mean, all of this you can kind of see is leading up to something. So that night at dinner, Adela is talking about how, where she was in Canton, they did floggings regularly. And then Sister Clodagh was like, well, maybe if you'd spared the rod sometimes, then you wouldn't have had an uprising. And then she apologized. She felt like that was unfair, and she did apologize. And she noted Sister Clodagh noticed that Sister Blanche wasn't eating, and she was basically encouraging her, it's your duty to eat. And she wasn't eating because she was worried about the baby. And Sister Clodagh put her at ease, like he's a hearty soul, and I'm sure he's going to be fine. And Ruth chimes in and was like, that's not the only reason she's worried. And then she goes into how Blanche wants a baby and how she, you could tell, how she always looks at them. And of course, people are sitting around the table looking at her with the eyes all bugged out. Sister Clodagh is offended and basically told her that is not, an appropriate conversation. So Sister Ruth got up to leave the room. And Sister Clodagh, she jumps up and she wanted to comfort her, but she was like, I knew, know that you were sick and, you need help, and sister, and how I'm praying for you. And Sister Ruth was like, I'm tired. Like, I don't want you to pray for me. And, Father Robert, I'm not going back to Darjeeling. Father Robert already warned you. And, Sister, Srimati is watching you, and while you're always watching me. And eventually Sister Bryony got up and took that cup of water and threw it in Sister, Ruth's face, like, girl, come to your sister, I guess. I mean, in lieu of slapping her, because she was having some hysterical moment, and you telling Sister Clodagh, like, I know about the letters you send to Mr. Dean, and what did she say? And how how you are upset because he doesn't want you, and how you're taking it out on all of us. And yeah, so Sister Bryony went on and threw the water in her face, and then basically ended up having her drag out the daggone kitchen into her room and tried to give her some powder to help her sleep, and it was a hot mess. And so later that night, they were sitting around, and Sister Clodagh was reading the Bible. And she could tell that Sister Adela was concerned about something. So she ends up asking her, okay, well, what's the problem? is there something you want to say? Initially, Sister Adela wanted to talk to her in private. And she was like, no, we're a community. And, we shouldn't have, secrets. But secrets cause problems. And just say what you need to say. And so she ends up telling her that I agree with Sister Ruth's assessment of your relationship with Mr. Dean. I feel that it's inappropriate. I feel that he is overly familiar with you. I also feel like, you didn't do your duty as far as the leap and canchi, that, you probably saw that things were, something was happening between them, but you didn't intervene. And then the drums started, and Sister Blanche was like, oh, the baby is dying. I guess that's saying that, some tragedy has happened. And she, eventually got emotional. Sister Bryony got up to comfort her. And you can see later that night, Sister Clodagh was praying. So the next morning, Mr. Dean he's at home. He's cooking. A group of women from the village came in and started complaining about, about some oil, some medicine that was given to them. I guess the baby died or made it worse. They're saying it made it worse. He ends up taking it and he drank some of it and basically saying it's perfectly fine. Everything is fine. Go home, basically. And so you see him, he's now at the convent and he's presenting the bottle. And Sister Blanche started crying and she, felt so bad and how she couldn't she couldn't just sit by and do nothing. And how she apologized, and Sister Clodagh wasn't, she was understanding, because that's that's the nature of what they do. They help people, and especially with Sister Blanche and her love of children. It was stupid. It was a bad decision, because that could have turned out to be something horrible. But she ends up telling, Sister Blanche that everything was fine, and she go to wash her face, because Sister Blanche was bawling her eyes out at this point. And so Mr. Dean pulled out a gun and started loading it, and Sister Clodagh is looking at him like he had asked her if she had ever used a gun before, and he basically told her that you are probably going to need this. But she's saying, no, I don't think things are going to get that bad. And so she was walking, as Sister Clodagh was walking Mr. Dean out, they walked through the classroom, and she says that, do you think that they're ever going to send any more children here? And he basically said, no, I don't think so. And so, they started talking, and she started talking about how she feels like a failure and how things didn't work out, because that was the whole point. And so if it's not going to be a school, then what are they going to do? And then she started talking about her past, about how we still don't know the name of the guy. She talked about how, she was seeing this guy, and obviously things progressed, moved, to a place where it should not have. The family found out, and he's like, oh, so your family made you join? And she was like, no, I joined. And so he's trying to figure out, like, what happened to him. She basically said that he didn't want me. He wanted to avoid the war, and so he jumped on the nearest whatever and went to America. And so she didn't join the convent because she had some calling. She joined to, I guess, deal with the loss. And he was explaining to her that had they put him in a uniform and he had gone off to war, had he survived and come back, he would not have been the same man that you fell in love with anyway. And so you would have ended up being with someone else anyway. And they talked a bit. And then you realize that Ruth was creeping in the dark, and she overheard the entire conversation. So later that night, Sister Bryony, she took the dinner to her room. She put it outside, just knocked on the door to let them know the food was there. The sisters were in the chapel. Then she joined the rest of the sisters. Sister Bryony joined the rest of the sisters in the chapel to pray. Sister Ruth goes into Srimati's room, and then she realized, okay, this is it. I guess she made the decision. She ripped off her habit and everything else, and she put on one of them dresses and dolled herself up. And this time, the prayers are over, and Sister Clodagh is doing the rounds. She's blowing out the candles, and then she comes across Angu and the kitchen. And I don't know if that was the kitchen. I'm not sure where they were. But she was looking over Joseph. She was saying how Joseph had a nightmare. And so she was just basically there to comfort him. They talked a little bit. And Sister Clodagh was like, it's sad that Srimati felt like that was her only way out. And Angu said, well, no, it wasn't, it was the madness of love, of being in love, or something to that effect. And with that, Sister Clodagh decided she was going to go to bed. But as she was walking down the hall, she realized the door was open, and she saw Sister Ruth's garb, all her clothes on the floor, and she realized she was gone. And so she's now talking to, I don't know if that was Sister Adele or Sister Bryony, telling her that, I think it was Sister Adele, telling her that Sister Ruth is gone. And so they're now trying to figure out, okay, what is the next move going to be? So eventually Sister Clodagh and Sister Adele go to the roof. They decide they're going to sleep in shifts, and Sister Clodagh is going to take the first shift, because the way that when Mr. Dean left, he said that he would basically stay, he would position himself on, I guess, at the top of the hill or somewhere so he can keep an eye out, because he has a feeling that because Sister Blanche gave them that medicine they believe have made things worse, that they may retaliate in some way. And so now Sister Ruth is on the Sister Blanche is on, Sister Clodagh is on the roof with the gun, and eventually Sister Adele is going to come after she rests, come to relieve her. So while this is going on, Sister Ruth has made her way, or Ruth, I guess we could say now, because she took her stuff off now. She's made her way down the hill, and she is at Mr. Dean's house. But of course, he doesn't know that. So he arrives home, and he finds her sitting on his bed. And then she tells him that she left the order. And he was like, well, that was kind of a rash decision. Don't you think you should talk to Sister Clodagh? And of course, she hates me. They all hate me. And he want to take her back, but she's saying that she doesn't want to go back and how she loves him. And then she got upset, like, you don't love me because you love Sister Clodagh. And then he's trying to tell her she needs to rest, and she's going on about how he loves Sister Clodagh. And he was like, he doesn't love anyone. And he kind of helped her into bed and, to tuck her in. And then he eventually went to sit on the front porch. So, Sister is flashing between this and Sister Clodagh on the roof. So she's praying. This whole time she's sitting up there, she's praying. And it's flashing back and forth. Eventually, Sister Ruth wakes up. Somehow she was able to get past Mr. Dean, because now it's daytime, and he goes into the house. She's gone. He noticed she's on her way back to the convent. And so Sister Ruth is up there. She's still praying, and she's about to ring the bell. Sister Ruth comes out of nowhere and basically tries to push her off the building. Basically, when she pushed Sister Clodagh off the building, Sister Clodagh basically almost took her with her. So they're both now hanging off the side of the building by the rope that's on the bell. And Sister Clodagh eventually gets her footing and she's able to climb back up onto the building. She helps Sister Ruth up. She goes in to comfort Sister Ruth because she knows she's struggling. Sister Ruth tries to push her off again. So she ends up having to basically push her off of her, which almost knocks her off the building. She falls over. And you can see her head. Her head is kind of hanging over. She's looking down into the abyss or whatever she sees down there. And then eventually she stands up, and just as Mr. Dean is running up the stairs to go to the roof, Sister Ruth, she backs off of the building, basically throws herself off the building. And of course, Sister Clodagh is devastated, because when she spoke to Father Robert, saying that, she told him when he came to visit that if he didn't take Sister Ruth back, she feared that something bad was going to happen. But we still don't know what she told Father Roberts to make him so insistent that she stay. And unfortunately, it came to pass. Ruth is now dead. And Sister Clodagh was devastated. She sat there, it was sad. It was sad. So Sister Clodagh, so now they're now packing up. So it's not going to be a school. They've already lost a sister, and they've decided that their time there is over. And so Sister Clodagh is now saying goodbye to Kanchi, Joseph, and Angu, and they're going to be heading back to Darjeeling. And so they all load up. They say their goodbyes, and they're now on their way. Sister Kanchi, Joseph, and Angu, they go back inside. As they're making their way down the hill, they just about pass Mr. Dean's house, and eventually you hear him call out. They stop, and they talked for a while, and they were saying their goodbyes, and he was basically telling her, it's better that you forget this place, and she was basically saying that I'm never going to forget this place. And he was asking her, like, what's her next stop? And she basically said that she doesn't know, she's not going to be a Mother Superior anymore. I think that's what she said. And that she's going to go wherever the Lord tells her, or wherever God tells her. And he says, well, what if God is telling you to stay here? And, he obviously does have feelings for her. So, he wasn't totally, being honest with, Ruth. Anybody can see that. But, of course, he was going to tell her that in the state that she was in. And, she basically said, not in this lifetime, but maybe the next. And so he was about to turn away. Sister Bryony and all the rest of them said their goodbyes. And then she, recalled his name, and he reached out his hand and he shook hands. And if you remember that night, where she confronted him when, Ruth and him was alone for a brief moment in the chapel, and he asked her what her name was, and she said Clodagh. He was like, well, no, I know you guys take a different name. What's your name? And she didn't tell him. So this time she leaned over and she whispered, and that her name was Catherine. And of course that put a smile on his face. And he basically watched them leave. It started raining, and eventually I guess he went on in the house. And then the last few scenes were basically of Mapu Palace. It's claimed another life. It's it's still standing, and almost like just waiting for, I guess, its next inhabitants, I guess, / victims. I don't know. So that's basically how it ended. So pretty good. A lot happened in this episode. But yeah, so I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.